got up very early, right?
But with the time change, my body hasn't figured this out yet. So yeah, I was out of bed at 6:30 already. So that was good. I'm trying to open the Facebook thing up here. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm
So
not
while
seeing.
while you try and do that, I'm already going to. Oh, I have to turn off my Outlook here. It's making noises. I am going to drink my very healthy strudel with himbeeren. What is
But we
himbeeren?
are the picture of health today. I have
Yay!
water.
So this is the first Sunday without alcohol in the morning, right?
You don't have to always have that kind of drink. And no, to be honest, I just finished sports, so I need to rehydrate. And I'm going to lunch at the seaside. And so I'm pretty convinced that's going to involve a bottle of rosé. So,
Ooh, lunch at the seaside. Well, I'm actually going to go to the seaside as well.
to the sea, to
Because it's
the, to
dripping,
the Bibling, will say.
dripping of sea. We're going to go there and I'll be sitting there at the seaside.
Excellent. That's very good. Oops, hold on a minute. I'm going to turn my volume down on my phone. So I've got Facebook up and running. So hello to everybody who's already on. Nice
Yeah,
to have you with us this Sunday.
morning. So, motivational talk today on Sunday, right? That's what the
Oh,
plan was.
and I need it. This last week has been hard. I had a couple of days that I just could not get my butt moving. Yeah, it was tough. I don't know how you're doing.
Same, same. It was a good week in one way, and it was kind of like a downer again because we had this again still COVID-19 thing going on here in Böblingen. So all of a sudden we're Risikogebiet, and so everybody was like, oh, not again. And then it was this mix between work getting ready for some new projects which are really exciting, and then this
Which is
downer.
motivating. That's motivating though, right?
That's motivating. And then the thing was that was really motivating. And then this bad news came on, and that was just like this real bummer. And then you're kind of like crawling on the floor again, thinking, "Oh my God!" But then, and then that's when thought, "Well, I need a motivational booster. So how do I get out of that?"
Yeah, I think
And
we I think we all do. And
yeah,
this is like, so it's funny what you were just saying, that you were motivated by these new projects, and then something bad happened again. And I was listening to this song while I was showering. We're in this together. Do you know that song?
yes,
And it's this upbeat tune. We're in this together, and it talks about life as a yo-yo, and I think that's why so many people are struggling, because we have, it's much more up and down in a much faster volatility than we're used to.
oh yeah. I mean, if anyone would have told me a year ago that we would be in this situation, I would have said, "Nah, that's a bad movie." So
Exactly. It sounds like
yeah,
it.
think about that Drehbuch. It's just not fun. So yeah, did anyone answer to our question on how they motivate themselves? Did we get a
Well,
motivational answer out
I
there?
have some answers. Some of them were kind of, maybe not super useful. For example, I did hear wine from a number of people.
Wine.
What motivates you?
Well, that's okay. So if you don't have wine, then you have to pretend it's wine. Then that's motivational, right?
Which, okay, I get that too, right? I mean, there are those days it's like, yep, I need a glass of wine and then the world's going to be in order. But, it's not necessarily the healthiest attitude. One thing that I did here is inspiring stories. And so I
Mhm.
put some thinking into that. And I have to say, that kind of also inspired me. So we're going to be talking in a couple of weeks with an Ironman athlete.
Oh
And
yeah.
he wrote a book, about his experience where he went from a cancer diagnosis to completing an Ironman, which is phenomenal.
It's
And
amazing.
so in getting ready for, our discussion with Paul, I went back and started reading his book again. And I read his book a couple of years ago, I think. And now reading it again, it was one of the kickers at the end of this week that was like, oh my God, Jamie, get your ass out of bed and go get stuff done. I mean, if he can do it in the terrible situation he was in, I've got to have a little bit more power within me to go out and do what needs to be done. And so these inspirational stories, I'm glad somebody suggested that, because that prompted this, what's an inspirational story I know.
Yeah.
But I think it's careful. It's kind of tricky though, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to go and start comparing yourself to people. right?
Exactly, because that's very difficult, and that can be very demotivational as well, demotivating, because then if you think it, well, you cannot live up to that power. So I
And
think we have to take it little steps. So the little steps that fit to your personality, and then just like you said, get your butt out of bed right in the morning, and then just do something that makes you happy. Just
mhm,
like I have a very nice garden, and so what I did then after I was really down, and in the morning it was really sunny last week, or this week actually, it's still Sunday, right? And so I just made myself a cup of coffee, and I just sat in the garden with my Morgenmantel, and I just took a blanket, and then I was just sitting there, and I thought, it's pretty cute out here, and it's pretty nice, and at least that would just make me feel better. And I
mhm.
think even taking little steps, you don't have to run do like the Iron Man thing if you can't or if you don't have the chance, but at least do something for yourself then just to kind of find the positive things in life again, or at least in that one day, in that morning.
Well, and I wrote down a few other things here too that I'll talk about. But before I do, if you're listening to the video, either live or later on, put down in the comments. We would love to hear, what do you find is useful to motivate yourself when you're dragging and have trouble getting going? What steps do you take? The other thing that is really big for me is learning new stuff. I love to learn. And sometimes it's hard to get started on the learning because it feels difficult. But as soon as I do, as soon as I come across something new that's like, ooh, that's interesting, then suddenly it starts to generate this new energy. And the energy then, propels me forward. And then, then I run into the living room and I dance around in front of my husband and say, guess what I know? Guess what I know? and this feeling of knowing good stuff, I find super motivating.
Well, and I think it really helps also to get your mind off the negative things, right? So if you concentrate on something new and something that you have fun with, of
Mm-hmm.
course, then that helps you to get away from these dark thoughts. But if you get stuck in them, just to get out is to, yeah, do something new, do something different, go
Mm-hmm.
out.
Oh, I'm just saying, Achim is saying goals help to get motivated. Yeah, absolutely. And so, and
Yeah.
maybe I would even take it a step further and say, write down a goal and try to chunk it into small steps. Like as you mentioned before, what are the small things that I can do? Because if your goal is some huge big thing that seems unattainable, it's harder to get motivated about it. But if you say, okay, to get to this big goal, these are the small goals in between, then every time you reach one of those small goals, you get that, that boost, that dopamine in your
Yeah.
head that
Oh,
keeps you moving forward.
absolutely.
And Natalie's saying, yeah, absolutely agree with Achim. So goals is a big one.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
and taking the little steps, like that's what you hear all the time. You like you want to lose weight, and you'd say, "I want to lose 10 kilo in 5 months." Well, that's like, oh my God, in 5 months. But if you think, "I want to lose like half a kilo one in 1 week," it's
mhm.
much easier to cope with and to do. And then you have these, oh no, I don't know the English word, these Erfolgserlebnisse,
Yeah,
that little step. So you have that
small successes or
small
quick wins.
successes, and then yes, you can make a check mark and say, yes, I did it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
quick
that's
wins is big.
motivational.
Absolutely. Well, and then the more that we can turn those goals into positive goals, right? And so I want to lose weight. I always struggle with that one, and I do it myself because it's a negative goal, right? Whereas
Yeah.
if you say, I want to look better in my favorite pair of jeans, then it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit, yeah,
Hmm. True. Yeah.
something to build towards. Signing up for a challenge with a deadline is in the comments. Deadlines help. Deadlines are definitely, deadlines and milestones.
Oh yeah.
At the
Yeah.
beginning of the lockdown in the spring, in our family, we made these great big flip charts that were hanging in the kitchen and writing
Oh yeah.
down kind of things that we wanted to do and putting a time frame. And every time you cross it off, you have those little feelings of success, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. That's good. Yeah. And you need, I think you definitely need deadlines. I mean, deadline kind of sounds deadline, but I think it's very important to have a date.
Let's call
Because
it miles.
otherwise you keep, procrastinating, you just don't do it. Yeah.
It's true.
I need dates definitely. If I don't have a date, it just will take forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get going if you don't know when you need to get there,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
Elizabeth is online. She's saying she has to eat the elephant in small bites or she gets overwhelmed. Absolutely. Big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally
And that's
agree.
So, small milestones are great with a long-term vision. Yeah, and long-term vision I think is fantastic. And we talked about that in your last episode about jumping into the unknown, right? By having a long-term vision and then figuring out in small steps how you're going to get there is really
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
So yeah, so learning new stuff, setting deadlines, creating a vision, inspiring stories, and stories again. I would really go for stories that are very different from your life. Because
Yeah.
things. I remember back when you were writing your book, right?
Yeah.
And do you remember what motivated you to finish?
Let me think. Well, I just wanted to I mean, I was so proud that I was able to write this book, and the thing was, I had just, it was that motivation to say I can leave something. I always had this thing that I wanted to leave some footsteps, even if it's a tiny
Mhm.
book, right? But still, it was, the motivation was really because I wanted to have the final thing in my hand and to present it proudly. So that was my
But then
motivation.
there was something very different that was really meaningful to me, is you said that my expedition helped motivate you.
Oh, of course, yeah,
Right?
true.
And so the
That's,
fact
yes,
that I was out
yeah.
there trekking through the jungle and
I
climbing a mountain, which is something you would
Yes.
never do.
No, 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 no. I mean,
Right?
anyway, you motivate me all the time. So when you did,
which
I
is
mean,
which is awesome. But my point being is somebody who does something very different from you, but you see that they can do that, which is really
yes,
hard.
yeah,
That's a great way to motivate you to do your thing. Right. Like, I mean, Paul went out and did this Ironman, which is
yeah,
not something that's of interest to me. I think it's awesome, but I'm
yes,
not going to go do it. But because his story is so far removed from me, it's motivational instead of demotivational. Right. Whereas if I read a story about somebody who's doing exactly what I can't get myself to do, then it kind of backfires. And so, really looking outside of your area of specialty for those inspirational stories, say, wow, that's amazing, and all of the good in it. And then say, okay, well, they're doing amazing stuff over there. I can do amazing stuff in my area then.
yeah. And I think it's always this thing. At least for me, it's this thing in getting out of your comfort zone. So it's when someone else goes out of their comfort zone, and you know exactly that it's hard for them, then you
Mhm.
get that motivation. You think, well, yeah, I could do that too, and be brave. But it
Exactly.
doesn't have to be the same. Like, I would never climb a mountain, you know that, right? So, but then, yes, writing a book is something different. But
Mhm.
that's also getting out of my personal comfort zone and to motivate myself to achieve my personal goal.
Mhm.
And I think that's very important, to have those personal goals and don't have goals from someone else, because I think I'd be very frustrated trying to climb the mountains like you do. So it's just, and then I don't think that's helpful.
So, you were watching a video this morning, you said, about motivation. What was that?
That was Al Pacino on Any Sunday, and he was saying this. It was a very nice speech about when he was talking that, you know, when you get older, life is taking things away from you, but you don't realize that until you are in that position. So it's like something that we should be aware of, that things can happen, things can be taken away from us. So we should really always hold on to the good things in our life, and
Mhm.
to you know, get better in doing things, and stay motivated, and do things, because there will be one day that it's like that's no possibility anymore. And I think that was a very nice speech that he was saying, that
Hmm.
we don't realize, or we don't recognize all the positive things so often, because like when we, before we started the live, when you said like how we have these visions of what's going to happen in 5 years, but we don't know if that's going to really happen. So important is that we have those small visions as well, and be aware of them, and be aware of all those opportunities and good things.
Well, and this kind of goes along with some of the psychology. I've been reading about motivation in the past week. And one of the things that all of the psychologists say is you got to give yourself a break sometimes too. Accept that I'm not feeling good today and be with that for a moment. And then set kind of the vision. Where do I want to go from here? And the set milestones to get out of it again, but to also accept where you're at. And so I think it's a tricky balance that, how can I do it? But I think, coming back to the comment, deadlines, and maybe giving yourself a deadline, saying, I'm not feeling good today. I'm going to do that today. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up, and at 7:30, I'm going to go for a 3-mile jog, or whatever, whatever's going to get you out of the rut. And for me, it usually is going for a jog.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to feel bad. It's important to recognize and to accept that as well.
Yeah.
And but then, like you said, then just don't get stuck in there and go for something
Mhm.
new.
So
Because yeah,
the other thing that I went back and I looked at is some of my notes, and there's a model that I used to present in some of my company, my executive trainings, and it's called the SCARF model. Have you heard of this?
which one?
SCARF model?
Scarf Mott? No.
No, and I love this because it's easy to remember, first of all, and it's really meaningful because basically it's rooted in neuroscience. It was developed by the guy who's the leader who leads the Neuro Leadership Institute, and essentially he says that all people are wired with 5 key domains of motivation, and it goes back, when we in the episode, facing fear, we talked about this fight or flight response. And our
Yes.
brain is always looking, everything that we come across, is it good for us or is it bad for us?
Hmm.
And if it's good for us, we're going to move in that direction. But if we feel like it's a threat or we feel like it's bad for us, then we're going to withdraw from it or even run away from it. And so this SCARF model says, there are 5 key domains. It's status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And those are the 5 triggers that everybody has. And if you can trigger people positively in those areas, that builds motivation and momentum. But if you come across a negative trigger, then exactly the opposite, you're demotivated. And so, for example, one right now is certainty.
Oh
None
yeah.
of us are getting positive certainty
No.
triggers today, right?
Yeah, it's kind of it's tricky, very tricky.
Exactly. And every day we've got a different set of restrictions or new restrictions or different information. And so, we're all getting these negative certainty triggers, and it's really hard then to feel motivated. And so the question is, so what do you do? So if you know that that's a trigger, how do I build my own sense of certainty? How do I feel like I can better predict the future? And this is along the lines with what, our watchers are saying, with having a vision and milestones. I know what my future is going to be if I work towards it step by step, right? And so building that sense of certainty is something that we can all do. And so
But
I like,
is certainty something that's very important for us, like in the Western world, that we are so brought up with certainty? Is it
so
something that
it's important to everybody in varying degrees, right? And I would say, for my cultural background, for German people, certainty is a bigger deal than for
yeah.
American people.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's really different, right? So do we get used to uncertainty and then it doesn't become an issue anymore?
I think it's always an issue. I mean, because it's a biological trigger. I mean, it's hard coded into brains, and then how you're brought up and the environment that you're brought up in, it's either lower or stronger, right? And so, there's a questionnaire online, by the way, and I'll put this in the notes when we're done. There's a questionnaire you can go in and find out which triggers are biggest for you. And my biggest triggers are status, autonomy, and fairness, right? When I think something's unfair, I get pissed off. And this feeling of
Yeah,
unfairness, it
yeah.
triggers the disgust center in your brain. And
Hmm.
so, anything but motivational or, status, for me, it's important to be heard. It's important that, I have something to say and I want people to listen to it. It's important to be recognized. And I think that's a really big one for a lot of people, is how can we better recognize, even people who work here on our property, just telling them at the end of the day, hey, my God,
Hmm.
the work you did there made such a difference.
Of course, yeah.
And then they go home feeling better, right? And so I think, this is a cool model because you can apply it every day in your life. And so anyway, I'll put a link in,
Yeah.
and I don't know, maybe we'll do
I
an
have to
episode
take that
about it at some
test.
point.
Yeah. I'm actually going to take that test today.
Yeah, no, and it's cool, because you can look at it and say, okay, why am I feeling demotivated? Well, autonomy. I like to be in control of things. I'm not in control right now. And so then proactively looking, what can I do to give myself a sense of control?
I
And
think
that
that,
can help trigger the
yeah.
motivation.
And that's a very helpful hint, Jamie. I mean, you just said before that you guys are hanging these flip charts on your refrigerator. I think that could help if you are in we have these uncertain times when we struggle with motivation to check what is my trigger and then just write it down. And then you can look before you take the milk for your coffee out of the refrigerator and say, I think that's the reason why it's not so good today. And then work
Exactly.
with it. And just like
Yeah, and then what am
writing it
I going to do
down.
to improve
Yes.
it? If the world around me isn't going to suddenly get better,
Yeah, and
what can I do to make my little piece of it better? Yeah.
yeah, and if we write it down and if we look at it and if we think about it, that can give us some certainty that at least we know what we can do to
Mhm.
overcome demotivational times.
Absolutely. Let's see. There's a question. Fluctuating deadlines could lead to procrastination. How to avoid this trap?
Oh yeah. I
You live through project management. How do you avoid that trap?
well, that's there is only one thing that you have to, well, it's easy when you have a deadline, like, we have events and exhibitions, and then there's a
Mhm.
deadline, it's when the exhibition opens. And there is no way you can move things. So that's that. I think it's that how important is that what you want to achieve? I think that's the first thing in order, what do I get from it if I achieve it in that time? What is my reward? Because
Mhm.
if and I think it can only work if it's important for you. We procrastinate things that are not important, and we don't
Well,
want them enough, and we have to be honest to ourselves about that.
yeah, but I even procrastinate things that are important. I am the world's worst procrastinator. I am so bad. It's embarrassing. It is really embarrassing how much I
And
procrastinate.
it's really
Even
important
important things.
still.
And I think, Elizabeth, that's a really good question. For me, it's also, going back to what you just said, Peggy, there's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, right? The
Yeah.
extrinsic stuff, that's what's happening around us. And a
Yes.
deadline of the beginning of an event is something that, it's out there and we have to face it. But, Elizabeth's right. Right now, there are a lot of deadlines moving because the situation changes. And so, we thought something had to be done now, but it's actually going to move out till next March because of new restrictions or whatever. But we don't
Yes.
want to stand still because of that. And I think that's where to redefine goals as personal. What do I personally get out of it, whether
Yeah.
this thing happens or not?
Yes.
For me, it's learning Spanish. I've been
Yes. I.
trying to learn
Oh,
Spanish.
oh, learning Spanish is a for me as well. I want, well, procrastination, right? I wanted to do that since a year and a half. I'm still in module one because
And that's the thing, because we don't,
yeah,
and I at least have the external motivation, right? That I'm living in Mallorca now partially. And so that should motivate me. But I found that I really need the personal motivation. So yesterday I was able to walk into a restaurant and say in Spanish, I think I forgot my pink jacket here yesterday. Have you found it? And they gave me my jacket back, right? And so this was like a huge boost. It's
yeah,
like, it doesn't matter what's happening around me. It makes me feel good to be able to do that and have that exchange. And so I think defining what do I personally get from this behavior is going to
yes.
make it more sustainable.
What is my reward? What do I get out of it? And
Mm-hmm.
if that's worthwhile, I think then we stop procrastinating. But
Yeah.
if we don't, and if we get too, yeah, too distracted from other things, and I think that's the now is that we don't get distracted from all the bad news and moving things in this
Mm-hmm.
or that direction, wearing a mask and not wearing a mask, and staying home or not staying home,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So I think that we always have to concentrate on what do we still get out of it for ourselves so that we stay happy because we have to continue to live, right? We can't stop living now.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
mean,
and I think building some consistency into it, right? Saying,
yeah,
okay, every day I'm going to spend 10 minutes on my Duolingo app with Spanish, or I'm going to spend 10 minutes on Instagram building our follower base, or whatever it is. And then, and that helps also with the SCARF model, right? The more consistency
yes,
I build in, I'm
yes,
triggering that certainty factor and that autonomy. Hey, I'm in control of things,
yeah.
right? And so,
And put the agenda up on your
double
fridge.
win. So
Yeah.
the other thing, the final thing, and I know we're a little bit kind of over what we aim for on time, is the R in SCARF, is relatedness. And I think this is a really important one because it has to do with how much do I trust the people I'm engaged with, and do I feel connected to people?
Hmm.
And I think I said it last week, but this is one of the, not last week, 2 weeks ago, last week we had a day off.
Yes.
This is one of the reasons I love our Facebook Lives, because I feel like we're building this group of people who we
Yeah.
trust and can feel connected to, even in this world where we can't see each other all the time. And that's super cool to me.
It is. And also what I like that we continue and do it no matter what. We just said we have that date and we do it. And that's also that the reward here is for me that we just do it. and that's so nice and so amazing that we are. And that's also one thing that I love about how we live today, that we can do this, because you're sitting in Mallorca, I'm sitting here in Germany, and we wouldn't be able to have that kind of communication. We
Hmm.
wouldn't do it if things wouldn't have changed so much. Because actually, this is also one thing that I was saying, people trust, and how we are, interact with each other. I think with some people we are interacting much more and on a much deeper level than we did before, because we value now the possibility of what we have now, of what we
Yeah,
can do
that's true.
in
We,
these
we
tough
start to
times.
appreciate how important that connectedness really is. And
Exactly.
so, to everybody watching, whether you're with us live, and it's great to have you here with us live, or watching the replay, we want to feel more connected to you. And you can help
Yes.
with that, building the trust
Yeah.
by giving us your feedback. We would still like to hear recommendations. What inspires you? What helps you build motivation on days when it's kind of hard to get there?
Yes. Yeah, we'd love to hear and see and read your ideas, and also when you have questions, just
Mhm.
write them. We'd love to answer them.
And on that note, I think the next episode comes out on Tuesday. Is that right, Peggy?
Yes.
And
Right.
that should be a good one too. Kind of links to this topic of motivation. It's really focused around overcoming barriers.
Yeah.
So tune in on Tuesday when we publish
Yes.
the new episode.
Mhm.
And otherwise, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Have a
Bye.
wonderful week.
Have a good Sunday.
Have a good Sunday. Bye.